Whole new week, week 6. So we're jumping into GI. GI is a lot. There's a lot in it. We've got 130 slides, I think, to get through this week. So I really hope that you read some of your chapters. When we get into nutrition next week, it'll kind of be a flow over, again, as those body systems kind of tie together. But I won't joke you around. It's a lot, right? You got through the heart, though. You can do this. All right, so basic board stuff to start us out. We have some medical terminology related to the body system. And we start with peristalsis. Did you guys come across peristalsis in your reading? Yeah, tubular muscular movement. So this is muscular movement. What type of muscle? Smooth, because I don't control it, right? And peristalsis is how my food, whatever I take in, gets throughout most of my body. So we have peristalsis in the esophagus. We have peristalsis to some extent in the stomach itself. But when we start getting into the intestines, both small and large, this is how we're seeing the food or byproduct or waste be moved throughout the body. And then gingiva, what is it? What do laymen call it? Gums. Gums. But the gingiva is very important when we talk about the digestive system. Is the very first point of your GI is your teeth and mouth, right? So your gingiva, and clinically for our patients, gingiva is very important because of what condition? Gingivitis. Exactly. And then we have some root words here. What's the gastro root word mean? Stomach. We saw that back in muscles with our gastrocnemius muscle, right? And then what is entero? Small intestine. And colono? The large intestines. All right. And then some action words. We have prehension. It's my favorite part. Yep. So really prehension is grasping, but when we talk about it related to the GI system, it is biting, right? Or grasping with your teeth. With teeth, biting. Okay, so if we were to say what's the very first step of the digestive system, or taking food in, trying to digest a burger, what's the very first step of that whole process? Grasping it, biting it, getting it into your oral cavity. And then mastication, we know. Do you remember your muscle that controls this? The masseter. And then lastly, deglutition. Swallowing, yeah, if you don't do this one right, you're dying. And our swallowing. And we'll talk about 2 different types of digestion, kind of how digestion works in 2 different ways. Anybody have a guess? So mechanical, exactly. So give me an example of mechanical digestion. Chewing your food, yeah, biting and chewing. And then what's the other one? Exactly. So this is where we have saliva in our mouth. This starts the breakdown process. And obviously when it gets into our stomach, there's more acids and chemicals. And you guys are gonna learn, love, memorize. That also helps with the chemical digestion. And then we have 3 different types of eaters in this world. What's one kind? An omnivore. Who's an omnivore? Me. Pigs. What's the other one? A carnivore. One species of our patients is a strict carnivore. Obligate. Cats indeed. Obligate, sure. They must have meat. That is not an option. And then lastly, herbivore. And who are they? Yeah, cows, rabbits, horse. Very good. And then we have our layers of our GI system. And this is something we see across a lot of different parts of the GI. So our small intestines and large intestines, but our stomach and some of our other organs of digestion also have these same layers. Sorry guys, I am super short of breath today. I'm gonna try not to do any acrobatics. I don't know if I can take it. Yes.
Can carnivores still eat plants? Like
Sure they can, but most of their diet needs to be beef.
Oh.
Yep, we'll talk about that in a little while. So the first layer that we have that's going to be the one that absorbs things is our mucosa. Where else in our body outside of like maybe the stomach, small intestines or whatever, do we have mucosa? Okay, our nose for sure. Our mouth, right? We have mucosa as well, like my cheeks are considered mucosal. And that's how I have medication that works orally, where it'll melt on my tongue or melt in my mouth and it gets absorbed. Yes? Yes, it is. Absolutely. Yep. Very good. And then we have our submucosa. And we have our muscularis. And then on the outer is our serosa. And I always remember the serosa is slimy because that's the one that I can touch. The mucosa is the innermost because that's the one that's going to absorb the vitamins and nutrients out of the burger that I eat. Okay. And then we have a label guy. I'm going to see if I can get a couple different colors to work here for us. So this diagram is of the abdominal cavity. Again, remember it's always right? Okay. So our cranial most abdominal organ is this guy. Who is he? This is the diaphragm, this is the liver. So the cranial most organ that sits immediately behind the diaphragm is the liver. Okay, so this is the cranial most abdominal organ. It's the same in me, guys. In fact, all of this is the same as me. Okay, if I were standing in four-legged position. Okay? And then to the left, our big organ, and again, you know how I deal with it. This is the stomach. It is always on the left side. On me, on dogs, and on cats. And then hanging off the stomach here is our spleen. And then we have two kind of matchy-matcher organs. They don't have any role with digestion necessarily, but because we are talking about the entire abdominal cavity, you do want to have these included. What are they? The kidneys. And if you'll note, the right one's slightly more cranial. That's a point you'll want to know, but we'll go back over when we get to the urinary system. And then our caudal-most organ, again, not related to digestion, but kind of, sort of. The bladder. Every day of the week, it's going to be the caudal-most abdominal organ. Okay? And then the little squiggly, small intestines. We must clarify because there's a huge difference in the function of the intestines. And then we have our kind of unfinished square right here. So we have our colon or large intestine. This is the ascending, transverse, and descending colon. Okay, so ascending means going up, transverse means going across, going down is descending. Okay? Yes.
What about the gallbladder? Is that not included in this?
I don't care about him so much, but if you want to put him right there, go right ahead. Go right ahead. Guys, the way that I go for the abdominal cavity is by organs I can palpate. I cannot palpate the gallbladder, nor can I generally palpate the pancreas or the uterus that has nothing going on. So I don't add those. These are organs that you can palpate, and you will learn during physical exam to palpate them. The reason I want to kind of start with this now, when we get to physical exam and you're working your way back the animal, again, what's the cranial most organ? Okay, so you can know with your hands what you're feeling if you're right at the back of the ribs or the end of the ribs. You know what organ you're touching, okay? And then same thing as you're kind of working your way through, you should be able to feel the stomach. You should be able to feel small intestines. A lot of times you will feel large intestines and a big poop waiting to happen. Okay, palpating the bladder, very, very clinically important for you. So yeah, I don't necessarily cover every single organ, but the ones that we definitely can or want to palpate during examination. Okay, all right, woo, got through that. I'm dying, guys. I am sick, yeah. My daughter got the flu last week. I know, man, I know. It's just been this cough and plus or minus pneumonia. I haven't got my X-ray results back yet. It's fine. But yeah, I just get winded really easy. And I had some really good cough medicine last night, so I'm still kind of like waking up from that. All right. So let's pull up our GI. I really like the GI. You guys know me. I like every body system. But again, it's the body systems that we can really connect with on a visceral level, right? Like the GI system. I get hungry and I can feel it just like my patients get hungry and can feel it. The processes that we'll discuss today really are mammalian, much like every other body system we have talked about so far. So again, if it pertains to the dogs and cats, it's working the same way for me as well. Good job on your homework for this class. Don't forget, only 3 of y'all have turned in the essay for human-animal bond, and that's due tonight at midnight. It's kind of why I asked what y'all do this weekend. Nobody had nothing. Do not wait till last minute, guys. Just saying.
I tried and then my son wasn't helping, so I get up.
I feels you. I feels you.
I want to help you. How do I help?
Oh, you know what? I did get myself some new AAAs. Let me go grab one real quick. Hopefully that'll be quick to grab one.
But then I got distracted. Yeah.
Hopefully Scotty's doesn't mess with it. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right, so chapter 16 is a pretty good chapter. Though you think you know how your stomach and GI and pooping works, probably you don't. So again, reading the chapter is really going to help for exam purposes. So skim tonight for what we don't get through. So we'll talk the basic structure kind of to get us started. And how those structures kind of vary a little. Really basic, we are kind of already covered this. So carnivores, obviously the meat eaters. Omnivores, like everything. They can have everything that benefits them. And then the herbivores, of course, that's our ruminants. And then our non-ruminants, which would include the horses and the rabbit. And if you didn't know already, anything that's true for the horse is likely true for the rabbit, and vice versa. Their freaking natures in that way, but their GI system is almost identical beyond size, obviously. Right? So digestion, we kind of talked about the basic process a little bit. So obviously breaking things down, breaking the burger down into the 50 million different nutrients that my body can then actually absorb and utilize to keep me going. to build new proteins or new fat stores or energy stores from sugars. How do we do it? So mechanical breakdown. So this is, we covered on board stuff like chewing. The peristalsis is considered mechanical digestion and how it's kind of moving food along. That is mechanical, right? And again, with chemical reactions and the chemical digestion process we'll discuss as well. All right, so your basic GI tract, 1 tube, starting, running through the whole body, right? We've covered most of this. When we get to the small intestine specifically, you'll learn the 3 different parts of your small intestine in order. We won't cover that quite yet. We'll get there. You can see most of the structures you probably recognize. So the pharynx, kind of important, right? The throat that's going to lead to the esophagus. The liver, again, look how cranial that is. Okay, so you really want to start your visualization process for when you get to physical exam and palpation. Again, with the stomach, the small intestines, and then the larger colon or large intestine that's going to lead to the whole out. Okay, we'll talk about all of these structures as we go. Now, this is very true. This is a dog. This looks nothing like how the horse GI system looks. Okay, we'll get there. It's weird. It's different. Okay. When we get to exotics next semester and we talk about birds, though birds are one species, every single bird has a different GI tract. And again, what it depends on is what does the animal eat? What does the animal eat? Okay, yes.
Is the cesium similar to our?
The cecum was thought to be an appendix back in the day when we were monkeys. It really doesn't have a big function in small animals. It's got a huge function in horses, which we'll get to. So basic structures, starting out with the oral cavity. We're going to start with teeth. Okay, you got to start with the mouth, right? That's how you eat, okay? How you're munching your carrot stick. And then obviously into the esophagus, right? Where, yeah, once we swallow, the esophageal peristaltic movement kind of takes over. You guys have probably been like me at the Hutch Mall eating nachos from the Mexican place and choked on a tortilla chip. And it got stuck right here. And I thought I was going to die. But eventually, it softened. Eventually, peristalsis continued carrying it all the way down my throat until I no longer felt like I was going to die. And then our stomach, I think you guys maybe feel the most familiar with him, but there's quite a few things that we're going to learn together about the stomach. And then the small intestine, where a lot of nutrient absorption takes place. Okay, your stomach doesn't absorb anything. It's just breaking stuff down. Okay, it's not until we get here where we actually are absorbing the burger. And this is where I'm making the burger into poo. All right, here is your 4 layers in a nice little illustration. So you can see the mucosal layer has all sorts of little, what look like cilia. It's not cilia, but little fingers you guys will learn all about. And then our submucosa, again, our muscular layer. That muscular layer is going to help with what? Peristalsis. And then the serosa. Okay, if the doctor were to cut into a patient's abdomen, dig out all the crap that's in the way, and now you're looking at your stomach or you're looking at your small intestines, what you would be touching is the slimy serosa. Okay, and sometimes, especially in gastric or enteral foreign body surgeries, the doctor can tell before he even cuts into the stomach or small intestines how bad it is based on how the serosa looks. Okay? So they can tell before they even know, is that a rubber ducky? Is it undies? What is it in there? They can kind of tell how bad it is by how the serosa looks. All right, so your GI system is controlled by a lot of different functions. One of the coolest things that I think about in life, guys, is this enteric nervous system. What does enteric mean? Pertaining to the small intestines. we have, this is a known fact, well researched, plenty of studies. We have a nervous system in our gut that has more neurons than our spinal cord, which is crazy. About 5% of the neurons just in my brain that live in my gut. So when I say things like, go with your gut, you should listen to me. Maybe not you guys in particular, but my Whitney kids, right? When they're crossing out their answers and not trusting themselves, there's a reason. Your gut says that that's the first choice, or that your gut tells you that person's not good, stay away. You guys know Gabby's not. But your gut is very important. So beyond just the digestion functions, your gut neurons have a lot to do with keeping your buns alive. It's crazy. It's crazy. But we do have nervous system control to a certain extent. So central nervous system, and then our endocrine system, which is our hormones. Some of the chemicals that we'll talk about today that are related to breaking down the burger are considered hormones. Don't worry, you'll learn about all your hormones in the endocrine section. 5 weeks, 6 weeks away. But what this is with our different points, these different plexi in our gut across all of our abdominal cavity gives these messages back to the CNS. So it can be something as simple as I'm hungry, or I need to go to the bathroom, to something a lot more serious or scary in terms of disease processes. So nervous system control, it's really neat. All right, getting into the mouth. Ooh, guys, we're gonna cover this tooth stuff. You guys will have actually a little worksheet tomorrow too on teeth. Dentistry though, this is not even it, okay? You'll cover dentistry in both of your nursing classes in heavy, heavy detail. Why? Because the Whitney is 8% dentistry. So this is a very important section that I might seem to glide a little quickly through. Don't worry though, you'll get tons of info on this eventually. All right, so your oral cavity is the entrance, the way in to the GI tract, right? And everything in the mouth, but we do break the mouth down into 2 different portions. So we have the vestibule, which is the outer portion of your teeth and cheeks. So hamsters hold their food in their vestibule, okay? And then the oral cavity is the inner part of your teeth. So this includes the tongue, the palates, all of that jazz, okay? Do you remember what we called a vestibule before? It was in the ear. So a vestibule is kind of like a room, a chamber, okay? That's all it is. And then your teeth. You guys maybe probably know some of this stuff. So other things that we've seen before, the apex is the tip. Point, yes, whatever. We don't call this the tip though, because it is a different structure. And if you can notice, the crown, which is what we call above the gingiva, has a different layer of material on it. That's your enamel, the hardest substance in your body. The gingiva, again, are gums. And then subgingivally, we have our mucosa, which again, there for absorption, right? Nothing in the world makes me happier than having a really bad cat and squirting some Bupredex in his mouth. Hiss at me now. Now that you've got drugs in your face and they're taking effect and you're slowly falling over. So the mucosa, very important for us. The root, obviously, any portion of the tooth that's under the gingiva. The pulp, as you probably know, the inner portion. This is what's going to have our nerves as well. And then the bulk of your tooth is actually made of dentin. Do you remember this? Is this new to anyone? Totally new? Okay, cool. Very cool. Yes. Yeah. So the biggest bulk of your tooth is dentin. I only repeat that because it's important to know. And then enamel being the hardest substance, which I think we covered back in bones. The teeth, you guys already know this. So they are embedded in the upper maxillary bone. and the lower mandibular bone. A couple other structures that we'll point out as we go. So surfaces of the teeth kind of relate to different parts or different ways of positioning. And this really references either trauma, caries, which is what we call cavities, but we don't call them cavities. So we have buccal. I think we went over this like week 1, week 2. Do you guys remember? So what is buccal? Cheek. You can say buccal if you want. Labial is facing the lip. Lingual, facing the tongue. And then palatal, facing the palates. Okay, or closer to the palates. So keep those little terms in mind. Again, you'll be going through lots more dentistry as you progress through the program. So a couple other things that are different based on what you eat or your teeth. So this is a horse tooth. That looks totally different from the dog tooth that we were just looking at, right? And that's because horse teeth have what's considered to be open roots, where we have a closed root. That means my teeth stop growing at a certain time in my life. Horse teeth don't.
That's why they get floated.
That is why. Also why you have to make your rats get chewies, or guinea pigs have something to chew on, or they will have some serious malocclusion issues. So we've covered most of this, the enamel, the dentin. The dentin, again, surrounds the pulp cavity. I have seen so many patients, you guys, who have teeth that are totally either worn down or fractured and their pulp is exposed, and they're still eating. I'm like, how the hell is that even possible? It's painful, excruciatingly. And then the cementum is a thin area of bone between the actual bone we think of. So when we're extracting a tooth, we break through this cementum and some of the alveolar ligaments that actually hold the tooth in the bone. Is it possible to break the mandible or maxilla while extracting a tooth? Yes, it is. Yes, Taylor.
So because they have an open root, are they more likely to infections and stuff?
Not generally, no. Not generally. So the way we kind of break teeth down with terminology is brachiodont. Brachy means short, right? We kind of cover that with short-faced dogs, or brachycephalic. So brachiodont means short teeth, okay? So these are ours, so humans, pigs, cats, carnivores, right? And then our ruminant incisors only. They're considered short too. Their incisors are pretty little compared to their others. So again, smaller crowns, they have roots that are developed, they're not open, and they stop growing at a certain period of life. Where we have our hypsodont teeth, horse, boar's canine teeth, there you go. Our rabbits and our rodents. Lagomorphs are your rabbits. If you don't know that, pick it out. So these teeth grow constantly. They have to be worn down somehow. I've seen a guinea pig in practice with his two upper and lower incisors through the lips because they had both overgrown. Because nobody at the pet store that they bought that guinea pig at told them they have to provide something for them to gnaw on. That's a different soapbox issue we'll get to at some point. But the point is they do grow continually, and if you don't care for them, you're going to have some very serious issues. Very serious. And the reason is a lot of times they can't eat when their teeth are going through their lips of the opposing jaw, right? Same with horse. Horses can become very aggressive if they're experiencing any type of dental pain. They'll become head shy, where you can't halter them, you can't, work with them. Because they're so painful. Yes.
Don't a lot of rodents also have issues where they chew on the metal bars and their teeth don't erupt correctly?
Not that I know of. So the brachiodont tooth, again, this is a short guy. So you can see kind of the pulp cavity that leads to our nerves. This is that cementum or that thin layer of bone that kind of holds it in place. The periodontal ligament I mentioned also. So it's not like the tooth is in the bone. I mean, it is, but there's a couple layers around it, right? So when you're extracting a tooth, which you can do under doctor's orders, this is what you are trying to loosen, is this ligament and the cementum itself to break that tooth out. How many of you guys have had a tooth extracted? That kind of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth motion. It's not like you just go grab a tooth and pull it out. You are working it ever so slightly to, again, loosen it from the ligament there. All right, and then totally different is the hypsodont. So again, he has open roots, same pulp cavity. I mean, of course, he's still gonna have the nerve pathway there. But his open root allows for that tooth to continue to grow and push it up and push it up and push it up. So they have the same structures, again, with our enamel, indentin, the cementum, but quite a bit different looking, right? You guys, I think, all saw, maybe not with the horse necessarily, but like that sheep skull, same kind of wavy structure on the top that you can kind of see up here. So again, it's not like a nice smooth tooth, right? It's kind of ridgy. And that is, again, why? Say it again.
They grind their teeth together to chew it.
So their food, it's what they eat. They don't need sharp points because they're not ripping and shredding meat. They're eating hay and grass, right? Okay, just making sure we're clear on that. So again, GI systems, not just the stomachs or the cecums or whatever, are different based on what you eat. The teeth are a huge example of that. And then with hypsodonts, we break it down two different ways. I think one of these was a spelling word, your aradicular hypsodont. So aradicular just means without a root, right? So first we have our radicular hypsodonts, like ridiculous, that's what it sounds like, where the apex remains open for quite some time, but the apex will eventually close and the tooth will stop growing. This happens in the cheek teeth of horses, but they're growing to like 28 years, right? And then the aradiculars, again, no root at all, period. They will grow forever. These are the rodents, rabbits, etc. Okay. How are we doing, guys?
So when they're growing, is like the dentin and like the middle part, like all of that is continually growing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. As it gets pushed up out of the gingiva. All right, and then we have our baby teeth. Baby teeth are really important, knowing when adult teeth erupt and when an animal loses their baby teeth. Does anybody know why? How to age them, exactly. So, you know, a lot of times we'll have people come in that say, you know, how old is this puppy? Well, you can check his premolars. Does he have any premolars? Does he have an adult canine tooth? That can tell you kind of how old they might be. So all of our animals have two sets of teeth. We call the baby teeth deciduous. Say it with me, deciduous. And it is common, especially in small breed dogs, for them to retain their deciduous teeth. And that's not good. That's no good news. So deciduous teeth are the babies. They're smaller, generally whiter. They will eventually fall out and or the animal will swallow them and they will be just fine. It's normal. They do, again, erupt at different times. You can use that timing to help you with the aging process, which is kind of neat. It's a guess. Yeah.
All right, I'm a little confused about the radicular and aradicular.
These ones eventually stop. These ones never stop. Root, no root. The word radicular means rooted. This, because it has the prefix A, means without a root.
And these are like in horses.
These are, yeah, and or rodents. It's just a way to break up continuously growing teeth. They continuously grow but stop, or they continuously grow forever. What, am I right? This was a spelling word?
Not yet.
Hold on, I'll look.
I know. In which case you should know your definitions.
That is the spelling word.
Damn, I'm good. All right, so with our teeth, and dog teeth, I guess, to a certain extent, we have these 4 different types of teeth. Each different tooth has a different job. So what do you think the job of the incisors are? Your incisors are your very front teeth. It's a spelling or a board word. Don't.
No.
It was a board word. No, I do not masticate with my incisors. Prehension. Very good. Very good. Not trying to be saucy, but you guys, we have to make sure we're getting this, okay? So yeah, incisors are there for prehension. That's what you bite your burger with, yourselves, right? You don't put your burger all the way back in your molar, do you? Okay. So same with dogs. I mean, dogs will pick up their little kibble, chew it a little, and work it to the back of the mouth, right? They're grabbing it out of the dog food bowl with their incisors. Very good. And then what do you think canine teeth do?
Ripping, shredding.
Rip and shred, yep. And then our premolars and molars. So sure, mastication, so grinding, like grinding motion, right? Or really breaking that piece of steak down or whatever, okay? Now you guys will know, you can see here they're pointing at your 3 molars on the bottom, got 4 premolars on the bottom, 1 canine on one side. This is going to become important when we start talking about how we label teeth, because you do need to know, and you will eventually, what's called a dental formula, okay? And that's where, again, you know how many teeth an animal should have on an upper part of their mouth.
How many incisors do we have?
We'll get there, hang tight. Oh my God, here it is. So this is your dental formula, okay? So this represents, let's just look at the adult dog since that's what the picture was that we were looking at. So it represents in formulaic form all of our different teeth. So we have incisors, 3 on the top on one side, and 3 on the bottom on one side. So we have a total of 6 on top, 6 on the bottom, okay? And then our canine teeth, we have 1 on one side upper, 1 on one side lower, for a total of how many canine teeth total? 4. 4. Okay, so what you have to do with this is you're looking at your incisors, canines, premolars, and molars, and you're timesing that by 2. Generally, you'll see formulas written with that 2. Okay, because this is only representing one side of the mouth. Okay. How many of you guys have been working on your little notebook, guys? This would be one to copy out of your book and put in. You will need to know your dental formulas. Not for me, but for nursing. I'm sorry, I'm sweating to death up in here, you guys.
So what does the equine mean, 40 or 42?
Say it again.
The equine, it says 40 or 42.
Yeah, I don't know. Horses are freaks. The big thing that I would know also, and you can figure this by knowing how to use your dental formula, the number of teeth, the total number of teeth, okay, for your species. Okay, so again, let's look. We have 4 premolar upper, 4 premolar lower. That's what the fraction sign means, upper, lower. How many premolars do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 upper premolars. How many lower premolars? Okay, and guys, honest to God, when I'm sitting there doing a dental, because they're not my favorite thing to do, because I get bored really easy, is I'll visualize, I'll count back from my canine tooth. How many premolars am I supposed to have? I should have 4. If they have missing teeth, I need to record that on their dental chart. If they are a freak of nature and have an extra premolar, and some dogs do, you need to record that too. If I am going to extract this premolar, I need to record that, okay, and say what premolar I'm taking. the third premolar, 1, 2, 3, from the lower left side or whatever. Okay, so this will become something you get very, very familiar with in both your nursing classes, as you guys will do dentals in those classes. Yes?
How do you determine the difference between a premolar and a molar?
By counting, that's exactly it. That's
They don't
exactly
look
it.
different like ours.
They do to a certain extent. So this molar looks a lot different from this premolar, but the way that you tell the difference is by counting, by using your formula, and always counting back from a landmark like your canine tooth, right? And counting, there should be 4, and then my molars start. Okay, so again, the dental formula, very, very important. Just as a preview for you guys, okay? For nursing, I will tell you, you'll only learn dog and cat. For large animal, you'll learn the others. And this is just an example of a way of numbering. We call it the triadan system. This is kind of hard to read up here, but the idea is that every tooth has its own number. So like the lower left canine tooth is always 404, always, no matter who you are.
4, 3, 1,
1, 2, 3, 4. I have a beautiful handout for you for tomorrow, don't you worry.
Okay.
So the triadan system is something that we do use here, and most clinics will too. The old way of doing it, I don't think they talk about it yet, it's old. You might see some clinics still, oh God. I'm trying to even remember how they do it. It's something like this. Like this is an incisor, and this means the lower first right side. It's something like that. Or like your canine tooth, you put a number up here because there's only one canine tooth, and that would reference the upper left canine tooth. That can get confusing though. Whereas when every tooth has its own number, and it's always, always, always 404, or 304, or 204, or 104, you don't get lost in this. So you might see that in clinic. It's a really kind of old school way to do it, but you might. Lots and lots of people do the triadan nowadays as a standard. Okay. All right, the tongue. We talked about the tongue back in muscles, right? The strongest muscle in terms of size anyway. So the tongue is broken into 3 different parts. The apex is the tip, point. You guys just don't like saying tip?
I don't think that's it, but.
Body and roots. So the root is where it is held in place and supported by your hyoid bone in the back of your pharynx. You have papillae. What are those? Little bumps, little bumps. You already know that. So papillae, obviously for the cat, helps with grooming, but the papillae do also help with moving the food to the pharynx. All different sorts of sensations, or functions rather, including taste, pain, temperature, touch, panting, thermoreg. We knew that, right? And then our salivary glands. Where would we be without them? How many of you guys have done the saltine cracker challenge?
Salt and crosses.
Saltine cracker challenge. Or cinnamon challenge.
Yeah.
Sam!
My family, whenever I was like, I don't know, like 5th grade, my family.
Oh my
had to do it.
gosh, child abuse.
I know.
That's funny. So saliva is very important. One of the very first processes for digestion that we have after we have taken the food into our mouth, and even sometimes before we actually take the food in, we're salivating, right? So saliva, very important, comes to us via these glands and their ducts. Very mixed in terms of how it's made up. It can be quite watery, or it can be thicker, right? And some of that changes based on what you're eating. We have tons of stuff in our spit. Tons of stuff. You guys probably already knew water, probably. Right? Did you know we have different antibodies? Right? So catching germs as you're trying to sneak into my body, we can stop them right there. Bicarb, Do you guys remember what we said bicarb's important for? Acidosis, yeah. So regulating our pH. Our spit helps us regulate our pH. That's kind of crazy. And then we have these enzymes. Enzymes break stuff down, right? So we have our lysozyme and our amylase that are going to help to break down our starches as we consume them. Right, so functions, obviously lubricate your food, does have antibacterial action again with those antibodies, pH regulation, thermoregulation, and breaking down your food with enzymes. Right? We have three main salivary glands, and they are paired. So we have our parotid, which are kind of right here. They're almost submandibular. Sometimes people will think that the submandibular lymph nodes are big, and it's actually the parotid. We have mandibular, they are close up to your mandible, and then sublingual as well. We don't try to feel our salivary glands on exam, but they can become enlarged, they can become obstructed, so it's important to kind of know where they are. The TMJ. Yes, Emily.
Humans get salivary stones. Do dogs?
We call them something different. Siaceli. S-I-A. Sialocele. S-I-A-L-O. That's the root word for spit. C-E-L-E. Look that up. That's something close. And yeah, oftentimes we can just surgically excise it out and they're fine. They can totally eat and break down their food just fine because they still have 5 other glands to work off of. Great. I think you guys pretty much know most of this, but there is a couple interesting things. Well, only one really. So we already know extension and flexion, right? So everybody show me extension of your TMJ. Right? Because extension is increasing the angle between 2 bones, right? And flexion is decreasing the angle, so, right? Translation. Show me translation. I'm popping my jaw every time I do that, right? So TMJ, translation is like the cow. You see him like totally, right? The horse does it to a lesser extent. Dogs and cats, we don't usually see that side-to-side motion. So again, remember trans means across, right? So translation really is that side-to-side kind of movement instead of the extension flexion, they kind of go side-to-side. And their TMJ joint, because again, their body knows that that's what they need to be eating. Sorry, my cake weather alert was on. I have my phone on because I'm waiting for my x-ray results. God knows when I'll get them. It's not like it's going to change anything at this point. So yeah, make sure you know translation. That's the cow jaw movement, or goat, or whatever ruminant you want to say. Yes?
Would a forward back motion be considered translation?
Yeah, I guess it could, but really translation is more side to side. Side to side.
Is that seen in any other animals?
I would say any ruminant, so like a llama is a ruminant. They do that. Guys, it hurts. Yeah. It hurts when I do it. But yeah, translation is just one of those interesting terms. And again, it's because of what they eat. Okay, it's because the ruminants are eating plant materials, they're herbivores. So they have to have that side-to-side grinding motion. The up and down chewing isn't going to do anything for them. The pharynx, you pretty much know, I think, all about him from last week. And the respiratory system. So again, our throat is going to lead to the esophagus. We hope that the food goes down the right tube, right? What's the bad tube the food could go down and kill us? The trachea, the trachea, the windpipe. So this, when we swallow, again, the epiglottis closes, it snaps over that trachea. So the burger ball can go down your throat the right way. But we've all had that moment where we've maybe started catching something in the wrong tube, and what do? We cough, right, to clear our airway. Again, the eustachian tube leads from the cochlea to our pharynx. Again, that kind of gives us that equalization of that pressure buildup from all of the sound waves going in our ear hole, right? We also have tonsils back here. Tonsils we'll talk about a little bit more when we get to the immune system. Yes, animals do have tonsils too. They're generally not as pathologic as we see with us. Salivary glands you can kind of see here. So the mandibular, again, very high in the mandibular region there, and then the parotid as well. Guys, why don't we stop there? Let's take, we could do 15, come back at 11, 10, and we'll pick back up with the esophagus. Okay, we're gonna get started back here. All right, the funnel of esophagus. Without it, we could not get our food through our body into the important parts where you can really break it down and start eating, or using it rather. So the esophagus is, again, muscular because it has peristaltic movement. We know it must be muscular. So again, it's going to connect the throat to the stomach, as you see there. We do have mucosa in the esophagus. And this is something that is kind of like a basic fact, but very important to know clinically. Whenever an animal eats something they shouldn't, what do we generally do for them? We make them throw up, right? If an animal were to have eaten something caustic or maybe drinking something caustic, we do not make them throw up. Because what will happen is it will ruin their mucosa, one, going down, and then two, coming back up again. So that's generally with substances like, let's say a dog drank a bleach bucket. You wouldn't think they do, they do. You're not gonna make them barf up that bleach. You're gonna instead try to absorb what's already in their stomach, because you'll cause even more damage making them throw it back.
So how do you like absorb it?
Charcoal.
Charcoal, okay.
Have fun
Is
with that.
Isn't activated charcoal, does that also make them throw up? Is
No.
there charcoal that makes them throw up?
No, usually it's apomorphine that makes them barf.
So they eventually just pass the charcoal out and it doesn't affect them.
We are very careful. There are two different types of charcoal out there. One that has sorbitol, and that can be a concern with some animals that maybe have blood sugar issues. But generally, most clinics just buy the straight up non-sorbitol, so there's no worries. So again, we have muscles, specifically the tunica muscularis. It has two different layers within the muscle, one that's more circular and one that's more longitudinal. And that is what helps with that peristaltic movement and getting the chip that was stuck right here all the way down into my stomach. All right, so when we talk about digestion, what's the very first step? Prehension. And then we gotta chew it up, right? We do the mastication. Again, we have some salivary secretion that started once we put the food in our mouth, and or as we're thinking about putting the food in our mouth. And then our swallowing, again, is considered voluntary to a certain extent. To a certain extent, right? For the most part, I know when my food has been chewed enough, I'm going to go ahead and push it to the back of my mouth to swallow, right? But when we get to the pharyngeal stage, like the very back of the throat, the esophagus takes over. All right, the food is down, it's starting that process of moving down the escalator into our stomach. But being able to move the food to the back of the throat, that's voluntary. Again, we kind of know. Do any of you guys count how many times you chew? I just wondered. No, I don't. I'm way too
My
lazy.
little siblings, because they
Mhm.
just engulf stuff, so
Yeah.
we used to have to like make them chew a
Yeah.
certain amount of times.
And that's a thing. Some people do it, some people don't. Yeah,
Grossed out of
it's
it.
just that voluntary thing, I guess. Yes.
Too.
What about some dogs that don't seem to masticate, like they just swallow?
Yeah, and some dogs do. Yeah, some dogs do. Yep. What about it? It really isn't going to affect their ability to break down the food because as soon as it gets into the esophagus, on its way to the stomach, it's already starting to break down. The idea that chewing 100 times makes you get every single nutrient out, not a thing. That's just not a thing. That's not how the science works. But if you want to count to 100 before you swallow, go ahead. I won't stop
That's too
you.
much work.
But it's not really going to change how much nutrients you derive from the food. Unless we're talking maybe like Brussels sprouts or heavy plant material like that. Because when we talk about our horse and cattle, they have to, especially cattle, they have to chew it once, swallow it, bring it back up, chew it again, swallow it, sometimes even bring it back up one more time to really derive all of the cellulose out of their food. We don't have to do that. We don't have to. Thankfully, that would be weird, right? Yes.
So it doesn't matter if they don't chew because the kibble is small enough?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna get absorbed. The nutrients are gonna get absorbed either way. There's other concerns about that, but not related to digestion necessarily. So this is peristalsis. So the bolus is our burger, okay? So we're gonna have a contraction happen behind the bolus that kind of pushes it along a little bit. Gets a little bit further, another contraction will take place, again, moving it. And guys, I can remember and this was like 8th grade, and I can seriously remember the way that it felt, just waiting for that chip to get down, because I thought I was gonna die. Dad, call 911. But it does work just like this. So right behind the chip, or the burger, or whatever, is gonna be pushing it along. And the idea, again, is that no food is left in our esophagus to go bad, to rot before we're able to actually process it. Thankfully, right?
What's the bolus mean?
The bolus is a chunk of food.
Is that just what it means? It's a chunk of food?
A bolus is a chunk of something. All right, and then this illustration is just your 4 layers, a little bit more blown up. This is like artwork right here, right? So again, our mucosa, the inner layer, the submucosa, the muscle, and then the slimy serosa on the outside. Just like the heart and the lungs, we have a layer, or a couple layers, that surrounds the abdominal cavity and the organs. So we have our visceral peritoneum, which lies against the organs, and then we have our parietal peritoneum, which is the outer layer of the abdominal cavity. We also have our mesentery and our omentum. You can kind of see the mesentery is what holds most of our GI structures in place from our spine or from our dorsal area. So the mesentery kind of just suspends everything. The omentum, and they do have it kind of here. So the omentum is this like yellowy looking net-like stuff that we'll see in the abdominal cavity. I know it says it's the plexus, but that really is what it looks like.
It just says nerve.
I know, I just said that. It's what it looks like though. And I'll try to show you another picture of omentum as we go. The omentum, if you were, let's say we're doing a spay, doctor rather, cuts the dog open, the very first thing when she opens that hole that she's gonna have to scoot out of the way is the omentum. So it's kind of like a fatty, net-like layer that kind of just holds everything in place. Okay, so the mesentery suspends everything, where the omentum keeps it where it needs to be. Okay, so the liver lobes don't squawk out sideways. They're kept nice and in place because of this net. Okay. Oh, there's a way better picture. So this omentum is this web-looking thing. Okay. So again, the fatter the animal, the thicker the omentum will be. You can straight up cut and throw away omentum. In fact, I know many a doctor, when they're going to close up their incision, they try to squish everything back into place, but there's too much freaking omentum. And now their hole is only this big. It's not like they can like smooth it out with their hand, right? So they just cut it, throw it away. It does nothing. It's not vascularized. It has no nerves. It really is a fat net that holds things in, as you can kind of see. Okay, so the omentum, kind of cool. Not really the most exciting thing. Yeah, I don't even care about the lesser and greater omentum. That just how it attaches to the stomach. Don't even care.
Does it like form back together after
It will. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I mean, the doctor's cutting out like this much. Not really gonna affect a whole heck of a lot. Not to mention the organ that she just removed, which is the ovaries and the uterus, doesn't need to be held in place anymore. Right? But I've seen that it doesn't completely cover the bladder. The bladder would be about right here. But in cystotomies, a lot of times too, they cut it out. Don't need it. I mean, we do, but we don't. All right, and then the stomach. The stomach's exciting. So the stomach obviously stores our food for us until the small intestine is ready to take it, right? Again, the stomach does not really absorb nutrients. It's just storing and breaking stuff down and waiting for the small intestine to say, hit me, bro. Send me that food, okay? In the stomach, we have both mechanical and chemical. You guys have maybe even felt this, like your stomach kind of moves a little bit, right? After Thanksgiving or if you're starving to death. And then obviously we have lots of chemicals that are going to start breaking things down too. But the stomach really does churn quite a bit. Different parts of our stomach churn and mix that food up. The stomach does have the capability to produce B12, which helps the small intestine absorb nutrients better. One really cool thing, and I didn't even put this together, until 3 years ago. The first year I went to Nicaragua, that was like the standard treatment. Every horse in Nicaragua got a vitamin B12 injection. They are starved, first of all, not on purpose. It's not a purposeful thing, but these horses, you can see every bone in their body compared to horses that we see on 47th Street, right? It's not the same. And I was like, why are we getting all these horses B12? Like, is it some kind of magic? Like, what the hell? Like, surely there's something more we can do for these animals. And they were like, no, they have such little quality of food to eat and absorb that us giving them the B12 injections helps them absorb every last little nutrient from the crap food that they get. And I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. I just didn't think of it that way.
So in clinic, you use it for.
Kitty cats sometimes. What's that?
Like for anemia.
Yeah, you end up straight up failure.
We have a big bottle of vitamin B complex, and I can't remember.
You can give it to just about anything and everything, and it will not hurt. In fact, all of you guys with your stress, anxiety, and other normal orders, I don't want to call them disorders, if y'all are not on a vitamin B or women's one a day, or for God's sakes, take your vitamin C since we're all so sick, you should be. You should be. But vitamin B for humans, a lot of times, is like a stress or mood stabilizer. It's like, why not? Why not take it? What does it do to your pee?
Doesn't it make it orange?
Super orange or yellow. And that's fine, totally normal. And then food that leaves the stomach in a milkshake form is called chyme. So it's no longer food. It's definitely not a bolus because it's not a chunk anymore. It's a milkshake. Okay, we have broken the burger down into such a fine slurry that now when it moves into the small intestines, it'll be easier to absorb all of those vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients. Okay, so chyme. This monogastric stomach is ours, right? And our dogs and our cats. So it's the one stomach, pretty simple. Horses also have a simple stomach as well. And then we have our ruminants that are freaks. They have 4 chambers in one stomach. So a lot of times people will say they have 4 stomachs. Not true. They have 1 stomach and 4 chambers. 4 F-O-R-E, happening before the stomach. So this is our cattle, our sheep, goats, llamas to a lesser extent, and some of those other guys.
I always tried to picture it because I've always heard people say, oh yeah, cows have 4 stomachs. So it's like,
That's
the
just,
picture 4 stomachs.
that would be crazy.
That would make them.
That makes a lot
Don't
more
worry,
sense.
I got photos for you, and I think you got a worksheet tomorrow too. So yeah, they actually only have one stomach, one true stomach that's just like this. It's just like mine. But they have 4 stomachs that come before the true stomach. Don't worry, I got you. So this is us, okay? Our stomach is divided up into quite a few different parts. So the cardia is the, I can't really say cranial most because that kind of fights with the fundus, but the cardia is the part that's closest to your heart. Okay, this is the end point of the esophagus where the food enters the stomach is through the cardia, okay? You wanna know this, all of this, I'll just say it now. We have then our fundus, and the fundus can expand quite a bit. So when we eat Thanksgiving dinner and we feel really full, that fundus is probably expanded to allow for that extra piece of pie. We have our body. The body and fundus act as mixing chambers. And then we have the antrum, or the pyloric antrum. This is the doorway out of the stomach. The food, once it comes in here, again, it's in milkshake form, right? Or excuse me, it's going to become milkshake up in here because of all the mixing. When it gets to the pyloric antrum, the stomach's going to say, yes, go ahead, you're milkshake enough, or no, go back up and get mixed up some more, okay? So the antrum can determine if the food is mixed good enough or not. And then we can actually leave through the pylorus. So the pylorus kind of acts like a gateway, and it only opens at certain times. Okay, food is not constantly being processed through our stomach and small intestine. Again, we have to wait for the small intestines to say, yes, I'm ready, send me the food, send me the milkshake. At that point, the pylorus will open, the milkshake goes through, and gets into the small intestine. Okay, if the small intestine is not ready, the food or the milkshake is going to sit there and wait, again, until that door opens. Okay, this is not a constant process. Okay, so again, the cardia is the point that comes off of the esophagus where food enters. The fundus and the body are mixing chambers. The fundus can expand. The pylorus is the way out and controls the doorway to the small intestine. Kind of cool, yeah? Yes.
What causes heartburn?
Acid buildup, generally. So I will say not only is this important for this class, anatomy exams, this is going to be very important when you get to radiology as well, and being able to look on an x-ray and determine what part of the stomach you're looking at. Okay? Is the rubber ducky in the body? Is the rubber ducky in the fundus? Is the rubber ducky in the pylorus? Okay, you'll want to know that. Okay? Yes?
If the fundus is like above the esophagus, how come there's no rack plug?
Because we have doorways. What are they called? They're called sphincters. Sphincters. Exactly that. We have a cardiac sphincter as well. Pretty sure that's in the chapter. Just saying. That's in everybody. Yes.
The pyloric antrum.
Okay, a sphincter is like your butthole. I'm so sorry, but that's just the way it's gotta be, okay?
Yeah.
It controls the opening. We have a sphincter here, okay? That's gonna open once we swallow the food and the peristalsis has moved it down. The cardio will say, yes, welcome, food, welcome, worker, glad to have you. Mix, mix, mix. When it gets to here, again, we'll have that sphincter open for us. The food will just go. Or the sphincter will stay tightly closed because it's not ready yet.
So that's like a holding cell, the antrum.
The pyloric antrum is the way out holding cell for the small intestine. Sure. Yep. Very good. Very, very good. And then we have what's called rugae or rugae. So rugae is a whole bunch of little kind of flappies, I don't know, what do they say? Folds, yeah, folds. Rugae we have in the monogastric stomach, and it helps to increase surface area for breakdown of whatever we're eating. In our large animal and ruminants, the rugae is also important for absorption purposes. And then again, increasing that surface area. Okay, just to know, rugae is the folds that we're looking at. All right, and then we get into the stomach cells themselves. So what we're looking at is kind of a stomach cell, and you can see we have these pits, or gastric pits. And these pits we have available as channels for all of these different chemicals to be, to come through, to get to the actual area of where the food is within the stomach. So we have our mucus cells, we have chief cells, parietal cells, and then endocrine cells. And we're going to learn about those top three. The endocrine cells, again, hormone related. But this is within the mucosa, which again is there for absorption. Right? So we can bring these chemicals up to help mix up the food, break it down a little bit, and make it that milkshake. So we'll talk, what do you think the mucus cells make? So we'll talk about all of this here in a minute. So as we start building up all of these chemicals, a couple chain of events needs to happen. Okay, so the very first thing that happens is the production of our pepsin. Our pepsin breaks down proteins. So something that's called proteolytic means protein breakdown. The word lytic means breakdown. Okay, so it's going to start to break down our proteins. And this is a really important step of the process, considering that proteins are very, very important for us to break down and recycle in our bodies. Right? So in the fundus is kind of where this starts. We have pepsinogen. Pepsinogen, the beginning of pepsin, yes? So pepsinogen is created in the fundus by our chief cells. Going back to our photo, our chief cells make pepsinogen. Pepsinogen then gets converted to pepsin in the presence of hydrochloric acid, which is in our bellies, right, or in our stomachs. So this chain of events has to take place before we can even start to break down the proteins. Okay, the fundus has to be able to give the signal to our chief cells to go ahead and create the pepsinogen because the burger's waiting. Okay? So takeaways, chief cell makes pepsinogen, which turns to pepsin in HCl. It's at that point that we can start breaking down the proteins. Okay, so that's our first guy. It's our first chain of events anyway. This kind of goes back to the wait and see. I think I've covered most of this with the pylorus. So again, with the sphincter, we do have a couple more cells that hang out in this area. These are our G cells. The G cells make gastrin. Gastrin is one of those really basic hormone chemicals that's going to help to break things down or continue breaking things down. And then our mucus secreting cells. I learned this as goblet cells, and I think your text has that also. And I always think of, and I know this is gross, but a goblet full of mucus. Take it if you want it. All right, so all of our secretions start to happen, one, in the presence of the burger, right? Like just like we talked about with the chief cells, the burger gets into the stomach, the fundus recognizes it, starts to secrete. right? Our pepsinogen, starting that whole process. So it can happen in the presence of food. So the burger hits the belly, boom. But it can also happen when we're waiting to eat a meal. So like 12:30 comes around and we all roll out the front door and you can smell that Chinese place. And your stomach starts growling. You're swallowing a little bit more because you've got all the spit build up because you're like, and that's chicken. Okay? So it can happen in anticipation of a meal. Your body knows it's time to eat. She's going to be eating soon. Let's go ahead and get ready so we can attack this as soon as the burger hits the stomach, right? So I think we've covered some of these. So gastrin again with our G cells. We don't really care too much about the histamine secretions and or the acetylcholine. Really, we'll strip it down here for us. So our chief cells make our pepsinogen. The G cells make gastrin. And then again with your mucus secreting, aka goblet cells, making the mucus. Okay. So all of these secretions, again, are involuntary. You are not controlling them. I mean, outside of eating the burger, right? But again, your body knows when it's time to eat or when it's gonna be time, or should be time, to start getting you prepared for that. And again, all of these secretions are coming through those cells that we, or that pits that we were looking at, the gastric pits that had all those kind of tunnels flowing. Again, that's how we are getting these chemicals through the actual tissue lining of the stomach itself. I mean, basic but extra, right? Am I right? A little bit basic, a little bit extra. Okay. So with the cephalic stage, this again, the cephalic is pertaining to the brain, right, or pertaining to the head. So this is, we smell the food, we know it's time to eat, we're gonna start processing this. So with the parietal cells we haven't covered yet, these guys are the ones that's making the hydrogen and the chloride, right? And that we have to make what happen? Pepsin, exactly. Pepsinogen will only change to pepsin in the presence of HCl. So the parietal cells have to be doing their job too. Now, can you see, clinically speaking, when we have animals, and this isn't every animal, but when we have animals who eat and eat and eat and eat and they never gain weight, it's probably something up in here that isn't working right. It's not producing the chemicals needed to break it down so they can actually absorb nutrients. He can eat and eat and eat, and if the nutrient absorption doesn't take place, what is that food? It's total waste. It's all waste. Okay, so again, very intricate little pieces of the puzzle have to work perfectly in order for us to be able to absorb our food. Thank you for making my parietal cells work, Lord. Thank you also for making my chief cells work. No? You guys are down today, and I'm trying really hard to be up. Oy, I might just stop. So we've talked about G cells. So these guys make the pepsinogen. And then again, the G cells make your gastrin. Okay, so all three of your big cells, except for the mucus one, but we already know him. Okay, so you make sure you know those three. Okay, who makes what? Again, with the histamine, I don't really care. That's a little bit more than we need to really know. But we definitely want to know our parietal, chief, and G cells. Okay? And then the gastric phase. So this is when the burger hits the stomach. Okay? We're pretty much going to jump on it all at once and try to start breaking it down. So again, when the burger hits, it's going to make our stomach expand a little bit. We've got stretch receptors, just like we talked about in other body systems. These stretch receptors send the message to the nervous system saying, hey, let's do some digestion, right? And we can start the process. So again, we have gastrin, we have our HCl. This probably is no shock to you. Stomach acid, very acidic. very, very acidic. Again, that helps to break things down. And again, the hydrochloric acid, it's not just about breaking things down, but it's about activating the other system that can actually utilize the proteins and break those proteins down. As we'll talk a little bit later, we probably won't get there today, with the liver. The liver is a very important digestive organ, though no food ever goes there. The liver is what takes all of the recycled parts and builds them back up so I can have big muscles or gain a little weight or whatever, right? So it really is about, again, that process, the chain of events that really helps to make sure that we can absorb and really utilize every little thing we eat. I think it's fascinating. I'm gonna go eat something and I'll be thinking about it the whole time I'm chewing and processing it. So it is interesting. You know what, guys, why don't I stop here today? We can do a little video on Crash Course, if you like. Kind of covers a little bit of what we've already talked about. So we'll just watch at least one of these. We may not do both of them. And I'll let you guys out because I can feel you're not into it. And that's not going to be good for anybody. I feel you. We'll catch back up and review tomorrow. I think also, guys, I don't want to kick the dead horse. You being the dead horse. How do you think a veterinarian learns in vet school? Do you think they're doing everything hands-on in the lab? No. F to the no. So sorry. The veterinarian spent 40 hours on top of maybe school or work or whatever, reading their books. I know you hate hearing me say that. I cannot stop saying it until it's clear that everybody has. Okay? Again, I'm not new to this. I can tell when I have blank stares from 20 people in the classroom that this isn't getting through to you. And me standing up here doing my best, though it's my best, is only 1/3 of what's needed for you to really learn the material. Okay? Again, it's no shock how fast-paced we've been rolling, right? It is not going to slow down anytime soon. Okay? You have got to at least skim the chapters, or you will learn nothing. Okay? I hear all the time how, I just want to do hands-on. I just want to get in the lab. I want to do this. How can we learn the process, the physiology of the stomach in the lab? Okay, we can't. Some things we do just have to learn. Okay? I think back all the way, to like the main Greek philosophers of the day. How did they learn anything? They read. Okay, reading, dare I say, is an art nowadays, it seems like. It's not a thing for everybody. I know I'm kicking the horse, but figure out a way to read your books. Okay?
Sorry, before this, I said, you said it's an art, and I was like, reading's a weapon nowadays. But then again, before class, we saw this meme, like Stitch throwing the book at upstairs.
Here's the thing, your knowledge is a weapon. Why not harness it? Why half-ass it? I'm not saying you are, but why would you? You guys are spending a pretty freaking penny here. Could be prettier, but that's not how we roll, right? Don't spend the money if you're not really investing in yourself. You might as well just go throw that money at somebody else, okay? I think last week was the real big slap on the face for you guys, at least in this class, of holy fudge. This is a lot. It's not going to get any easier, okay? We have the nervous system, we have the hormone system, we have reproduction. These are harder than GI. Okay, and if you come into class completely clueless to what we're going to cover, even my best isn't going to be good enough. Okay, all right, why don't we do some videos? Liz, would you hit me? Let's make sure this isn't going to kill our ears here.
We all have our reasons for eating nachos at 3 in the afternoon. I happen to have my own.
Is that loud
And
enough?
Don't ask, it's personal. But
Yeah.
generally, we all eat any kind of food to accomplish two simple things. To
I'm gonna actually
obtain
turn up
the
just a
energy we
titch
need
more.
to stay alive and to get the raw materials required for building all of our tissues and stuff. That's because when it comes down to it, both you and the food you eat contain those two same things. Both you and food are made of stuff, by which I mean matter, made of certain kinds of atoms, and both you and food have energy stored in the bonds between those atoms. So all living things need to take in stuff and energy and convert it into slightly different stuff and energy. And you can get some of the things you need pretty easily. Like in order to get oxygen for respiration, to unleash the chemical energy in your food, you just have to inhale. But you can't just breathe in the stuff you need to build DNA or actin or a phospholipid bilayer. So how does your body really acquire stuff? That's where the nachos come in. This cheesy, crunchy dish is made of all different kinds of biological matter, like carbohydrates and fat and protein, and it contains a certain, probably shocking amount of calories, which is how we measure energy stored in the chemical bonds in food. So if I take like 100-calorie bite of nachos, it's probably with this much cheese wouldn't even be a very big bite. I can convert the chemical energy stored in those carbohydrates and proteins and fats to feed my muscle and heart cells and maybe like walk a mile, an activity that happens to use about 100 calories. But I can't just swallow the nachos and watch the lump of them travel straight to my heart or leg muscles. In order to actually use this food, I have to convert the biological matter into something my body can work with on the cellular level, which, as you know,